All right, well, hey, turn to Proverbs, the whole book. Yeah, it's one of those. It is really good to be back with you. I was telling Nikki last week, I'm like, I am excited to be back up here, making a fool of myself, preaching. This week, we're going to be hitting on a topic that I forgot to change. Oh, we're good. Okay, good, sweet. Well, I don't know if any of you have read the book, but a few years ago, I read a book titled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was like this. And it was a book by Stephen Covey, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And he's a world-famous expert on what I like to describe of getting things done. And if you think about it, if you've ever walked into a bookshelf or a library or Amazon bookstore, whatever it is, there are a lot of books on productivity, on getting things done, on making things more efficient. We as Americans overall love to shove as much stuff as we can in as little time as we can so we can rest from all that stuff that we accomplished. And for months, we have been expanding on this concept of wisdom, which is like, as we've said, it's doing what I know I should be doing, exercising wisdom. And another way that we describe this is we said that it was demonstrating internalized spiritual truth. So it is doing what we actively know is right, and we're doing it. We're demonstrating, we're exercising wisdom. And the verse that we, got that? Okay. And the verse that we referenced here to start off our series was here in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. And that's the beginning of wisdom is this: get some. Wisdom, that is, okay? And whatever you get insight. And Solomon was keenly aware of the need for leaders to live effective, disciplined lives. A king that lived in laziness will lead his people down the same path. And so the kings of God's people needed to live disciplined, organized lives. And I say this, and so what you're going to hear this morning is probably in some ways going to sound like a self-help productivity guide that you would find on a bookshelf. But we'll see, this is the wisdom Solomon was giving to these future leaders. It's stuff that you've probably heard from your parents or your boss, or you might have read somewhere. It's nothing earth-shattering, but we're going to see how Solomon portrays it and how he tries to communicate a disciplined life to these future leaders. Now in Proverbs chapter 13, so like I said, this is going to be one of these sermons that we're going to be bouncing around a little bit. So don't get in your comfy pastor or listening to the preacher mode, where you sit back and you just, lounge back. This isn't that kind of Sunday. Maybe next week, but not this week. So turn to Proverbs 13. So this is one of those weeks you're going to have to get ready to turn your pages a few times. So Proverbs 13 verse 16 says this: every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool flaunts his folly. Prudence is the ability to exercise judgment in situations. He is purposeful with his actions. He knows what he wants. He knows what is right, and then he goes out and does it. This is a description of a wise individual, a man of prudence. A fool just does what he feels like, when he feels like it, and likes to flaunt it. So you have this difference between a prudent man and a fool. And after chapter 13 here, what's going to happen is sprinkled throughout for the next, I don't know, about 7 or 8 chapters, maybe, no, wait, 7, 8, 9, quite a few. He sprinkles these truths of wisdom in order to communicate how the leaders are supposed to lead, and that is someone who's disciplined. So let's see what he says here. So let's look at here. So this is the first point here. We're going to try to summarize a few of these verses. And the first one is it's look. And so the first one is to look at Proverbs chapter 20, verse 1. We see a first example here. And he says, wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler, and whoever's led astray by it is not wise. So there's this aspect of a prudent man, a wise man, is one who is in control of himself. And so the temptation is, especially during those times, that an individual would get lost and trapped and lose control with an alcohol. And especially as a leader, the last thing you wanted was a leader who was drunk all the time. Because then he could be easily misled, he could be persuaded, he could be impacted. And so a king, a leader, must be very careful and not place himself under the control of something else. So this is one example. So a prudent man must be in control of his cravings. Also in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 17 through 21, here's the verse here up on there if you don't want to keep turning, but do so anyway if you want. So Proverbs 21 says, whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. So the idea here is someone who is not in control, is not able to budget and finance and keep track of it. And so whoever loves all these pleasures and keeps investing in stuff he can't afford actually ends up being poor. And whoever keeps investing in wine and oil will not be rich. It says, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. See, he's not bashing luxuries. He's not bashing wealth and benefits here. This isn't a all rich people are evil, all poor people. No, this is generally in this time, those who were wise and prudent were able to slowly advance and move their family up. A wise person has the wealth because they have been prudent, they have been controlled, they have lived disciplined lives in order to get it. But then you have the difference here of someone who is not. Remember, a fool flaunts his folly. A fool has gotten trapped and has lost control over this, and as a result, is now ended up there. So we see that a disciplined person, a wise person, is able to control their spending and indulgences and able to keep that under check or in check. Another one here that we see, I thought was interesting, was in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 30. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. The idea here is a heart at peace actually ends up giving life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. And this idea of envy and desiring something else and not being satisfied, it actually leads to the destruction of a person. And I know you guys can pick and choose, and you look at people who just seem to have a little more disciplined lives. Sometimes they're older and they just seem to be in this other category, I feel like sometimes. There's a show Nikki and I are trying to watch through when the girls aren't running around like maniacs called Minimalists. It's on Netflix. It's like an hour long. It's a documentary on these guys trying to say, hey, you can live off less, and that's okay. And so the idea behind it is just trying to live simple life. You don't need as much stuff as you think you need, is what they're trying to do. So they're trying to live a disciplined, self-controlled life, one where they're at peace with themselves and they're at peace with what's going on around them. Proverbs 15:15 It says, all the days of the afflicted are evil, but the cheerful of heart has a continual feast. And so there's this other idea, I believe what a disciplined life is that this idea of being okay, cheerful, and then they have a continual feast. And it's really, and you guys have probably think of some people like this, who can't seem to be rattled by stuff, and they're always just happy with whatever they have. You're like, what is going on? They're like, it's okay. I'm happy. I'm just thankful for this. You're like, whoa, I could learn something from that. You're not human. That's really cool. And there's just these people that from the heart, they're just inside and satisfied. And so no matter what they get, they're satisfied and happy with it. And so disciplined people, and I believe with a close relationship between wisdom and prudence and this connection, we can say the disciplined people are generally not rattled by life. It says in Proverbs 16:32, whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. And I thought this was a neat way that whoever is in control and disciplined of their anger is better than the people who are mighty. And he who can control his spirit and what's going on than he who governs a city. And governing and leading a city is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It is a long process. And that's the idea here is if you have control over yourself and your spirit, this is something that is better than ruling a city. And it's a great reminder to the people Solomon is writing to. Yes, you might one day lead and govern and be a mayor and lead a city or lead an army. That's fine. But your goal should be to be controlled, tranquil, at peace, disciplined on the inside first. We can go through a lot of other verses here, such as Proverbs 19:19, Proverbs 17:13 through 14. And then Proverbs chapter 20, verse 3 says, it is an honor for man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will be quarreling. So the idea, once again, is a disciplined person is able to take a step back and say, whoa. Well, the two people are going, rah. Okay, man, let's just chill out here. And so he gives into sort of its reason why. And this is the challenge with being self-controlled. This is the problem with being disciplined. He doesn't really hide from this. We can have create these huge pictures for us, but what we should be doing, and we miss that. There's actually some legitimate challenges here that he brings up. And one of those is in Proverbs chapter 27, verse 19, where he says, as in water, face reflects face. So you look in water, it has the effect of a mirror. So the heart of man reflects the man. So one of the biggest problems here is actually the heart of man. We like to be lazy sometimes. There's nothing wrong with chilling and resting and relaxing. But I really think some of the greatest inventions of mankind are the result of we just don't want to do as much. I mean, really, the automobile, oh man, it'll get us to where we're going faster. So we invent it. And then we add more stuff to do in our day. Then we'll invent like teleporters next. I can't wait for that one. This is going to happen. It's just, I think it was what drives person. So the heart of man is a challenge here. And it says here in Proverbs 21:2, every way of man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. Once again, mentioning that there's this challenge of the heart when it comes to living a disciplined, self-controlled life. And I think we have a tendency to hijack our own good causes because our flesh does not want to do it. Sometimes we can't even really articulate the problem that we have. We just sort of have it. And I know at times we can seem completely fine, but now just minutes later, doing the dishes sounds like the worst possible job on the planet. I hate that. I will wake up and I will have what Nikki and I call my achievement list. I'm going to accomplish this, 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 and this for the day. Cue the Rocky theme music. eye of the tiger, go in, kids do something, oh my word, this is the worst thing ever, and I get completely derailed because I can't find a clean spoon. Might as well just give up on the day, I'm done. That can happen that quick. That doesn't happen a lot, okay? But I'm just saying, it just didn't happen that fast. And Nikki's like, did you check the drawer? Nope, too much work, I'm done. I'm done for the day. That's how fast it is. Our own self can sabotage our own efforts. And if you guys have never had that happen to you, great. But I bet some of you have had something like that happen, okay? Here's another one, okay? If you think about it, in Proverbs 22:6, we all know this verse, all right? It's a good old parenting verse. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. My parents didn't teach me self-control or discipline. Oops. Well, you're doomed. Good luck to you. No, I think what it brings out is sometimes we're looking at trying to live a disciplined, a purposeful life, or trying to be organized, or whatever it is, and we're like, man, I was never taught this. That's going to be a challenge. It is. If you've never been taught how to do something, when you're in your 20s, you're like, this is what? It's different. It's like, if your dad spends time, or your mom or your dad spends time teaching you how to work on a car, you're not overwhelmed with it, in your 20s. But if you've never even opened the hood of a car, that is like the scariest thing in the world. Opening that up, you're like, I don't even know what this does. There's like this thing, and so there's this idea. Some of you are like, I've never been taught this. What would I do now? It's a challenge, and it implies it here. Now you look at, here's another one. Look at Proverbs 6:6. This is not one of these verses that were like, oh, work. Be like the ant. You sluggard. Work like an ant. You kidding me? Ants are nuts. They don't stop moving. Work is hard. Yeah, it is. It's really hard. Ugh, an ant? What about a sloth? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Go to the sloth, oh sluggard, and we'll go and kite work, okay? Or go to the slug, oh sluggard. That'd just be fun to say, but it's not what he does. He picks a hardworking animal because disciplined is hard. Oh, was there one more here? Where he says, oops, did I skip it? No, I did not. Ooh, you don't get Proverbs 13:4, I forgot to copy this one. Says, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. So he says, hey, the people who are lazy want it all to be given to them. They want it. They crave and they crave and they crave. And we're not, I want to be careful here. We're not going, and nothing here is bashing people who are in poverty by no fault of their own. And can we just all acknowledge that people can get trapped in poverty by literally no fault of their own? I think we can say this. And so this isn't all poor people are sluggards, they're worthless. He's not saying that. These are just general principles that we can take. Or it's like, sometimes you're like, the reason you're in that situation is because of this, this, and this. If you just done this and this, it's good to go. And then there's other people where a flood happens. Well, they should have just bought flood insurance. Have you seen how expensive that is? It's insane. Yeah, they don't have the money and they're working hard. And so we get this. So these are just, in essence, general principles. This isn't Solomon bashing poor people, okay? This isn't none of that, all right? But the idea is there's this idea where people who sit around and they do nothing and they just crave and crave and crave and crave, and that's all they are, and they're craving and they get nothing. But a diligent person who's in control will go, and while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied, because a diligent person recognizes in order to get to A, I will do my best to do this, and I will take steady, incremental steps in order to get to this. And so that's the idea here, is this idea of two different kinds of hearts or souls inside an individual. So how do we unlock this? How do we leave the church and become the most disciplined, self-controlled church in Tumwater? Let's see. Unlock it. Unlock the power. You guys love my bullet points. I bet you guys miss these lame things. Here we are. Ha! Point number 1. Define the goal of your self-discipline for your life situation. I worded this in a funny way for a few reasons. And one of those is in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4. It says, the sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. And so the idea here is of someone who was a farmer. And back in this time, this was the core, this is the basis of the economy there. But not everyone farmed and plowed. So I think this is good because leaders here, oftentimes you didn't see Solomon go around, King Solomon, with a plow. He had other people to do it. But other people took their guidance from how he approached it. And so everybody has a job that is for them. So some of you work at a hotel. Some of you work for the government. Some of you work for, the military, police, whatever it could be. You have a responsibility there. But what happens in our situation is I think sometimes we can put too much on us that we don't necessarily need to do. And so I'm just going to take a step back and say, sometimes stuff at your house, at your home. And you might look and say, well, I wish I could have posted this. I saw some comical thing. It was from 30 years ago, 20 years ago. It was this list of everything a person is to clean in a given year. And it was like every day, clean the toilets, wipe down the sinks and the mirrors, wash all the dishes, etc. Clean the toilet every single day? And maybe I'm a monster, but I don't clean mine every day. Some people are like, I don't think I've cleaned it yet. But we can self-impose this stuff on us, I think, sometimes that actually doesn't really fit, our life situation, our life thing. Man, I should be able to do this and this and this and this and this. You just had a baby. You're not going to do this, 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 and this, and this. Did you manage to get up this morning? Well, yeah. Did you manage to feed your baby? Yeah. You succeeded. Good job. All right? See, we got to be honest with our life situation. It's completely okay sometimes not to have this giant checklist. And so we need to define, if we're going to try to be self-disciplined, that it is right for you right now, and it needs to be done. Okay? Now, I would be very honest. I think praying regularly is something that you should be doing every single day. I think that is a need. I think that is there. It's not this all time consuming. And so those are things that needs to be disciplined and self-controlled and exercising. And then other times, other things maybe are not as big of a deal. I think the second thing here is number 2, and we figure out the craving that is stopping you. You're like, okay, that's weird. But see, because remember it says in Proverbs 27:19, as in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects the man. Our desires, our wants, and our actions are a reflection of what's going on in our heart. There are some times where I really, and I'll give you guys an example that's just going to get goofier and goofier as we go on, okay? So you want to read the Bible in the morning. So what craving is stopping you? I bet I know what it is. Sleep. Okay. So you got to be, okay, if I want to do this in the morning, What's stopping me? My sleep. Okay. What's stopping you from sleeping? I'm going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Why are you doing that? Well, I work to 12:30. Okay. But at least you've narrowed down your craving. What's interfering with it? Okay? Maybe you're like, I'm trying to lose weight. What's your craving? I like donuts too much. I do. I like them. And I live right by a Dunkin' Donuts. Maybe you should move. I'm just saying, you just got to identify this craving because it's important. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean, because sleeping is not a bad craving, is it? Most of us don't get enough sleep anyway. But you still got to at least narrow it down. If I want to do this, something is pulling me away from it. And sometimes it's a very good thing. Sometimes it's a very bad thing. So we have to at least have it narrowed down in our mind. What is preventing us from doing this? And putting that in a little, being able to put it in your hand allows us to now deal with this and work on it. Because sometimes we'll find this is actually a truly heart matter that I have to work with the Lord. And other times we're like, this is an easy craving, I can do this with. So we got to at least figure this out. So this third step I'd say that's really important to do is, as you're working on living a disciplined life and starting to make these steps in whatever area of your life, I think you should seek the Lord's counsel about it. First one is, I think we should pray about it. But the other thing I think we need to do is I think we need to study the Word of God and see, is this something that is a right thing to do? A thing of truth, a thing of spiritual truth. And if it is, then I think that's important to then recognize our craving. So we need to seek God's guidance by praying and by this. And so here you are, you're like, man, I really want to read the Bible in the morning. And you start praying about it. You start praying about it, and you're like, okay, God, help me figure out how I can do this, how I can change my schedule around, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then I think you should seek others' counsel. And you go and you talk to your good Christian friend that you believe has self-discipline, and they practice this verse in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5, that says, the purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. And this is why it's good to have a good friend that has no problem just speaking or asking good questions and helping you think about this problem. And so you go to this individual and you're like, I really can't seem to do my devotions in the morning. I really want to. I really, really do. And so he asks you a few questions, or she. Have you ever been able to function well in the morning? Well, no. Ever. No. I actually want to murder people in the morning until I have my cup of coffee. Okay, so you've never been able to function well in the morning. Nope. And when you were reading the Bible, did you see anywhere that says you had to read your Bible in the morning? No. So why don't you read it at night? What? But I think we need this sometimes. See, this is why we have this thing. If we're trying to live a disciplined, principled life, we're like, well, I can do this in the morning. I can read my Bible every single night. It's a piece of cake. Boom, you're living a more disciplined life already. Because you started off, you desired more time in the Word. But you had this craving of needing more sleep. And you thought you're supposed to do it in the morning, but you sought the Lord's counsel and He guided you to a friend and you asked your friend and your friend helped get your head on straight. You don't have to do it in the morning. It's an act of God that you make it to work every morning or whatever it is. It is just amazing. So just do it later. And then you can begin to live a disciplined life that is right for you in your situation right now. And you go back up to number 1. And now you can begin to live a more disciplined life in that. And then this other one here is number 5. We've got to take it day by day because you're going to blow it some days because you needed more sleep. Or a kid kept you up to 2 o'clock in the morning, or 3, or you wake up to the sound of hurling and vomiting, or whatever it is. Man, parenting is hard stuff. Life is hard. And it's not like it gets easier when you get older. I've heard horror stories about I went up to go to the bathroom and I fell over and I couldn't get up for a day until my child came over and checked on me, and there I was lying down. How dare you live an undisciplined life, you old person who fell. Give me a break. You take this stuff day by day. It's okay. The idea of a disciplined life is to have a goal. And as you have this goal, you begin to narrow down what's the craving, what are you desiring here, what's pulling against it, and we'll find sometimes it's the sinfulness of our heart. Sometimes it's literally, I just need more sleep. That's not sin, okay? That's not. It's just, I need more sleep, all right? And as you work this through, you begin to isolate and work, and you talk with the Lord about it, and you go to your friend about it, or your husband or your spouse, and you're like, this is what I want to do. You think it's possible? Can I do it? And as they draw this out, you'll be able to go, when you get it and you can figure out the path there, you can live a disciplined life. And I think this applies to people currently leading and managing in their own job and in their own place. If you have these awesome goals at work, you probably want to talk to your employees about it, because they might tell you, this can't happen. It can't. Well, I said it is. Okay. Production crashes, factory explodes, whatever it could be, all because you got stuck and you didn't ask for counsel and wisdom, and in your desire to be more productive, you destroyed everything. It's really dramatic, but I can imagine this happening somewhere. It probably has. So this is what we got to do. And so as you sit here, this isn't a typical sermon. It totally sounds like a self-help thing. But I do think as a community, as we all strive to be diligent and prudent and wise in our life, I think this is a process that we can follow as we figure it out, mark our cravings, begin to pray about it, hand it to our friends, and go. We can encourage each other to do more and accomplish more for the Lord Jesus Christ while we're here.